Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today's Singulus Technologies earnings call for the fiscal year 2024. The speakers will be Markus Ehret, member of the Executive Board, and Mr. Lars Lieberwirth, also a member of the Singulus Executive Board. They will walk us through the company's 2024 results. Before we dive in, a couple of housekeeping notes. This conference call is being recorded. If you have any questions, please submit them using the chat box on the bottom of the screen. During the Q&A session, we will also give you the opportunity to ask questions using your microphone. Please make sure to preface each question with your name and your company name in order to be considered. Thank you very much. And with that, I will hand it over to Mr. Ehret and Mr. Lieberwirth. The floor is yours.
So thank you very much, Mr. Nuss. And thank you also to MWB for hosting the call today. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You know me, I'm Markus Ehret. I'm with the company for 15 years. So warm welcome from my side, and we will walk you through our financial figures 2024 and to the forward-looking strategy. At my side is Lars Lieberwirth, my colleague, and he will introduce himself in a minute once I have finished with the financials, and you will get to know him very well. So just let me mention that we've been working in the last few weeks a lot and very intensively on our strategy and also on operational issues. And we're glad to tell you what we have achieved already and what we are trying to look forward to and trying to achieve. Lars will introduce himself in a minute and you will get to know him. So let me start with the slides, and I will run you through the presentation. So thank you for participating. Most of you will know in Singulus, of course, very well, and I don't have to introduce the company too much. You know that we've been established in 1995 and we are an equipment making company. Up to now, we are solely making equipment, and that might change in the future. Let's see, but up to now, it's solely equipment making and all the related services coming with that, like R&D, consulting, technology consulting, the engineering design, and on and on. Okay, and those who have had the chance visiting our headquarters, you see the pictures. That's our headquarters here in Main. Let's move on. The company business segments, of course, haven't changed. We are focusing on the big three segments: semiconductor, life science, and photovoltaics. There's always changes in the volume of business we do see in certain areas. And when we discuss the financials in a minute, you will see that this also has quite an impact on our profitability and on our economics. So new business areas where we are focusing on, and Lars will introduce that from a technology side and from the strategic side. You will see are, of course, hydrogen. We're focusing on batteries, and of course, we're always screening new applications, new areas based on our core competencies. And as I said, we will hear more from that in a minute. So let me start with the generic financial stuff and with the key financial figures. And you can see that we have 75.9 million in revenues in the last financial year. That's a little bit of growth compared to 2023. But the bigger changes are, of course, in the order intake with 77.2 million a core, and which is quite an improvement to the figure of 2023, when we just have seen about 43.1 million. Order backlog is strong. EBIT is, you can see, considerably better, and we will have a look at the gross margin later on. It's also a lot better. So we will discuss that in a minute. Also, the operating cash flow has been improved. We will discuss that when we get down to the cash flow statement. Well, as I said, the revenues are very much stable, a little bit of growth. And order intake in last year was driven by semiconductor. And we're very proud that we achieved 30.2 million, 30.7 even, sorry, so 30.7 million in the last year in order intake for semi. And that helped improve, as we've been working on those projects, also improve our financials a lot, because our gross margin, of course, is very much depending upon the product mix we are facing, and also upon the utilization of our whole organization. So last year we were able to improve our gross margin to 33.6%, which is quite good as we see it. The revenue split, you can see that in our annual report. I think most of you guys have been looking at it already. So the revenue split of the 75.9 million was 31 million for solar. It's been 23.3 for life science and 21.6 in semi. And as I said, the order intake was split up like 27.6 for solar and 19 million life science, and very positive 32.7 million euros in semi. So we're very proud of that. The beginning of the year was a little bit slower in order intake for us, but we do have a very strong sales pipeline for the semiconductor market, especially in China, and we see a lot of investment going on in the Asian area, where we can deliver machines and equipment too. So that's very strong. Lars will give you further insight on that, but upfront, let me mention that the US market for us appears rather difficult, as the US government is right now dealing very erratically with economic decisions. So that makes it very difficult for our customers even to take their investment decisions, which typically are focusing or typically are looking forward for many, many years. And if you don't have like a reliable base you take decisions upon, then it will be, it's becoming quite difficult to make investment decisions on such projects like solar fabs. And you know that we are offering heterojunction turnkey solar fabs. You will hear more of that later on. So, but as we see, there's quite some postponement right now in the sales pipeline. However, that doesn't worry us too much, as we do see that the order intake will improve and is moving forward, and we expect it to be at least on the level of last year, even stronger than last year. If you have a look at the P&L, you can see that we have a very small minus with 0.7 million euros in EBIT. So we were on an EBIT basis almost break even, and that was due to some cost savings and efficiency gains, and of course very much to the product mix with the very strong gross margin. So let's move on to the next page and see that's the balance sheet. Well, the balance sheet, as you all know, we are still very tight on cash. We see by end of the year, we've seen 11.3 million in cash. It's of course sufficient for the operations. However, you might have been following also that we have been reducing our debt position by 20 million in the last year. As the interest-bearing debt was reduced with our partner and long-term shareholder, Triumph, China National Building Materials, Triumph in China. So that reduced our interest-bearing debt, and we don't have to repay that 20 million. Of course, there was quite some offsetting against operations, and this means that we are generating cash, yes, but we're always a little bit tight on cash still at the end of 2024, and we're trying to improve that situation, of course, in the financial year running. So that's the key figure basically in our balance sheet. Of course, we have still a negative equity It will take quite a while to improve that, but we have some measures where we think that over time we will be getting better and better, and we're working on this also, but it will take time. So let's move on to the next page and have a look at the cash flow development. You can see that we have a very strong improvement on the operating activities. So you can see that we have received a lot of repayments for the new projects. And of course, we have been working very hard on our working capital and have improved both figures a lot, and that helped our operating cash flow. So let's move on. I think you might have some questions in the Q&A later on, and then we can discuss the details. I look very much forward to take your questions then, I guess. Let's have a look at the sales split by segments. Last year, still solar was very strong. Semiconductor doubled its revenues compared to the previous year. So it's quite becoming more important and bigger. Life science is always very strong and also very profitable. So we think that we have a stable level which we are working on with our customers here. So the sales split by region, always a little bit distracted depending on who is the customer and where are the contracts located. However, Asia is very, very important to us, and hopefully the Americas is getting better and more important in the future. Having said that, please remember that the US government is not a real asset for us these days. So let's see our employees base. Our employees base is very stable. It's very important to us because that's our key asset in the company. We have two very, very big assets. The first one is the technology represented by our employees. So our employee base is the key asset here. And the second is our technology, which is highly valued by our customers. So at the end of the financials, please let me, however, make one remark so that you understand that Singulus is still in a situation in which we are stabilizing and very carefully developing through the targeted measures towards a further diversification. You will hear more of that, and we are carefully developing and make an acquisition of new markets and new customers, and we're trying to focus on new partnerships also to diversify from any markets we are currently tied too much on. So, but nevertheless, please refer to the risk report in our annual report. This is very important because when you consider all the measures and the risks we're talking about, and we're seeing that as Singulus, there are still some circumstances that indicate that there is an existence of material uncertainty, which make us significant doubt on the ability of the company as a going concern to continue going concern. So please refer to the risk segment in our annual report 2024. Yet having said that, we are very optimistic looking forward. We have quite some measures in place to improve our operations, to improve our strategy. And Lars Lieberwirt, my new colleague, will introduce himself now and will give you a very deep insight into what we are aiming to achieve in the financial year 2025 and looking forward. So thank you very much. I look forward to your questions in the Q&A. And now I hand on to Lars. Lars, stage is yours.
Thank you so much. Good morning to everyone. My name is Lars Lieberwirt. I'm 48 years old. I'm married, 3 kids. My education background is in electromechanical engineering, and all my life I've worked in new product development, new process development for high volume products. And with that process development always came the equipment side. So I think I bring a very good mix of product knowledge, process knowledge, and equipment knowledge. And I'm glad to have a chance to apply that in Singulus. I started my career working for the Braun company and Gillette. Later been acquired by Procter & Gamble. After serving a while in Procter & Gamble, I moved 2004 to China. I stayed significant time in China and other countries in Asia. Moved back only in 2015. And during this time, I experienced a very good growth in high volume production that we set up for electromechanical products, for electronics manufacturing, but also for electrochemistry in China. And during 2008, I moved to a company called IP. It's a Singapore stock listed company at that time. And they were in the stage from going to be an equipment company into a product company. So there was that very interesting transition to be led to go from an equipment focus and adding design capability to acquire new skills and be more attractive to customers. That led to a couple of developments, acquisition also of new technologies, new processes. And it's an exciting time that always led into a production business. And later I was working a while as an independent house, a lot of projects for the medical industry in Boston, but also in Israel, different kind of medical products, and then joined a company from Singapore again, who were in the stage of going from an equipment and production business into a public company. So we led that, and it's an interesting time. I left the company in 2020 for beginning. I'm very excited and motivated to help Singulus to take a next step. I think there's a great story behind Singulus coming from the optical data storage and then being able to develop into new business fields. And I think that a remarkable transition has to be fulfilled, and we have to continue. We also have to strengthen our location in Germany and make sure that in Germany and in Europe we remain strong as a technological company and find our very clear profile to harvest business opportunities. Today's core technology platform in Singulus has two elements. The one technology platform is about vacuum technologies, so that includes vacuum deposition technologies, but also vacuum heat thermal process for evaporation, for thermal processing, sublimation, and so on, as well for wet chemical technologies, covering a range of different kind of actions you can do with wet chemical, from cleaning to passivation to deposition, wet deposition, but also for extraction and etching when you want to modify components for mass volume production. And those two distinct technology platforms are led by two teams within Singulus, and I think they have a very, very good portfolio of technologies and own developed technical skills. It was used in the solar industry very much to bring together wet chemical and deposition technology for solar application. But going forward, I'm trying to develop that a little bit closer. There are many more opportunities that we can capture, and out of that intersection between vacuum technologies and wet chemical technologies, we find a very unique selling point that Singulus has. We are the only company that has both these technologies under one roof and in one company, so we don't need to form a consortia to execute projects here, but we also can put our development efforts to really find the niche where both things, both technology fields are really playing very well together. And that will help us to unlock emerging business and what's new customer opportunities in a range of fields. And we are going through that. It sounds very wide, but it comes always back to the same few very fundamental technology questions, right? So in electrolysis and carbon capture. They are very interesting methodologies needed that require both deposition technologies in a vacuum, but also wet chemical processing solution. And we are looking for exactly those kind of projects and customers who also play in that intersection fields, because there we can really show our unique selling point and offer also unique technological solutions. Battery, especially the solid state batteries, are very interesting fields. Just the same way, there are certain processes that are only possible with wet chemical technologies, while others require deposition methods that are done in a vacuum. And if you bring that together with the right mix out of a product understanding what really the product needs, what the product process, manufacturing process needs, and turn that into an equipment to do those products, I think that's a very unique area that we can play in a very interdisciplinary team of physicists, of chemists, of mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, software engineers. So it requires a very comprehensive, broad, deep knowledge team to execute a project like that. It also applies very well to medical applications. Singulus historically has been very strong in chemical processing tools to produce a certain type of hydrogel contact lenses. But there are many other applications also in the medical field that require similar kind of technologies, and we are working on identifying those exact areas where you need a combination out of extraction tools, etching, but also deposition tools for unique medical applications. And that forms a foundation for new opportunities. That said, we're also looking into our existing core business very much, which originally came from the semiconductor world. So many years ago, when Singulus acquired the Stangl business for wet chemical tools, that was very much in mind for semiconductor application and solar application at the time. And that turns true to be valid and relevant till today. And what we have to focus on is to find our really niche and unique proposition point where we can play on those both technologies and most ideally. And there are many opportunities in semiconductor for certain kind of sensors. And we, as a small company, relatively in the semiconductor space, do have a very good access point to work really on those also profitable niches that not so many people can go to. That said, the solar and new energy market remains highly attractive. There's a major transition shift happening from the thin film technology to the crystalline solar, and meantime it's going a little bit back or again to the thin film solar with the perovskites coming up, and Singulus opportunity to act here on one side as a turnkey company to offer a whole factory or certain parts of a factory in a turnkey arrangement where you take a multidisciplinary approach in solar forward, and then combine that with the upcoming perovskites. I think that's a very unique way, and that is also where really the entire capability portfolio of Singulus plays very well. So in a nutshell, we are trying to diversify, but we stick to our core. So we are not going too much outside, but we are trying to take the existing technology and identify areas where we can apply a bit specifically and really play on that unique proposition that we have. We are also working to expand our capabilities and competencies beyond the team in Germany. That's very important. Our markets are very global markets, and they are also getting very focused on certain areas. So you need to do something unique in the US for the US, and the same thing in China for China, in Asia for Asia. And a very interesting market that's coming is also India. We take a look at that on finding what's the right way and strategy for us to go into those kind of markets, and what's the playing field on the technology side that we want to focus on. So the portfolio of Singulus is a broad portfolio. I did a deep dive in the coming weeks to understand, or past weeks to understand the way of how we design our equipment, how do we do on a modular approach that we are able to lift advantages on applying certain modules from one field to another field, so that we have efficiencies in our design. We had a deep dive in operations to understand our operational model and opportunities to improve operations. I did in the past a lot in that space, and I do see areas for opportunities that we can leverage on in Singulus, and those are very systematic ways we are going through step by step, understand how can we get more agile, how can we reduce our entire project delivery time from the start of a sales interaction until delivery to the customer, but also in factory, right? So how do we can get our project through the manufacturing footprint on our side. But those comprehensive measures that we are taking to build a strong portfolio and also enhance and add a few areas to this portfolio, so that we can go for those markets that I just mentioned. So the core of what we currently focus on are elements from thermal processing, wet chemical, surface engineering, and thin film deposition. And if you take those four pillars a bit together, they are very unique opportunities that we can play in, and they are also markets that have been untapped at the moment, and we are trying to explore and go deeper with unique solutions. And while doing that, from a product and process side, we are also looking a little bit in the markets themselves. They are very distinct opportunities in certain geographies where you need to run certain kind of products where there's a certain base of production, and we need to see that we balance ourselves very well and position us here well. Let's take a look at the semiconductor space. When I look at that, it's very much a question. Singulus' core capability is this depositions from an angstrom level or even sub-angstrom level in terms of the precision and homogeneity to several micrometer thick deposition of different kind, very, very broad kind of different materials. And that plays very, very well in the field of semiconductor. So if I look at that range of semiconductor, there are several clusters of project that we currently focus on and that we want to even shape out more clearly going forward. So one field is the area of the magnetic materials, deposition of ferromagnetic and antiferromagnetic materials, and putting together very complex layer stacks in order to build magnetic sensors, like the development started there in the AMR sensors, turned to GMR to TMR, so that stands for anisotrope magnetoresistive sensors, where a lot of technologies also in the hard disk drive industry started, went later into the giant magnetoresistive field, and they are very interesting and emerging new ideas still being developed, especially in the tunnel magnetoresistive, the TMR market. And while there is a shift in those sensors, because those sensors all themselves develop further and further, and applications change right from, if you just look at the development in consumer electronics, mobile phone, for example, there are massive application in those kind of sensors. And there's also a certain shift in technology. The phones are getting better and better, and the sensors are getting better and better. And that's exactly the field that we want to play in. There are, next to the pure deposition questions, also questions about thermal processing. There are certain sintering process steps that are needed in these fields. And that's exactly the technological playing field that we are trying to leverage. From those very thin, super high precision depositions, we are also finding our ways in other fields, for example, in non-volatile memory solution, no matter if that's an MRAM that we list here, or a resistive RAM. There are certain memory technologies that are built on magnetic depositions, and that's another field that we are applying. Same to the inductors. The inductor field is a very interesting matter. Inductors are needed to build integrated voltage regulators that really belongs together. So if you're looking today at the space of a printed circuit board assembly in a phone or any kind of a consumer device, you will see that a lot of the space in the real estate on such a printed circuit board assembly is needed in order to integrate inductors. And the more cores a chip has, the more inductors you need, because each core of a chip is has their own energy and power supply. All those power supplies require inductors. And Singulus is very far ahead in developing and producing also production level components for inductors that are needed to do integrated voltage regulators. And that is an interesting field that we are playing on. There are other fields in micro LED. They also require angstrom level deposition. So a lot of semiconductor people are always very careful about angstrom level deposition. If you go so thin, there are questions about homogeneity that are very difficult and challenging to master. Singulus is here super well positioned because of that magnetic sensor history for so many years of development, and we have the breakthroughs, and that's exactly the area that we harnessed. And I want to say, next to all those magnetic applications, you see micro LED is one of those that's not magnetic, so we call that beyond magnetics. So we're working on a very interesting portfolio of applications that take the experience and expertise from Singulus in magnetics deposition into new fields that are non-magnetics. So micro LED is one of those examples. There are other examples in the optics industry. There are further examples in a certain kind of a photomask that are requiring super thin deposition below a nanometer, and that's exactly the field that we are trying to play with and leverage the capabilities of the process and machine footprint. Another area I want to stress is the medical applications. Historically, Singulus did a lot in the field of contact lenses. Those are extraction tools and also chemical replacement tools and deposition tools in wet chemical way to produce or to process hydrogel-based contact lenses. So that's a kind of a contact lens that use a very customized polymer, sometimes also just a monomer chain. And when you polymerize that, there are certain elements that are not yet held in that matrix, in that material matrix. So what an extraction tool is doing is to wash those loose compounds out from the hydrogel so that they don't create an irritation once you put that contact lens in your eye. And so those extraction methodologies also apply to other fields in medical, and we are currently working through our ways very systematically and quietly to understand what those markets are, what exactly are the demands for those applications, how to integrate that, and how to build and leverage our existing machine base in a modular way, so that we don't need to start a redevelopment, but we can reapply in a way better to those applications. And that will help our efficiency and reduce our risk for go-to-market in that field. We have a very interesting further range of high production volume systems that combine painting, lacquering, polymer technologies, and also deposition technologies. And that's a very interesting field that we see interesting new areas, not just in Europe, but also in the US and in Asia. It's a field that requires really a multidiscipline approach and a very good understanding of those products. products. So we are dealing here with substrates from very light and easy to handle plastics to very heavy kind of glasses. And also there are other emerging applications for monomers based packaging that need certain solutions for permeability prevention. And those kind of products are all high volume production, and we are working with customers here in this field to make sure that their product development and our process development are going very much hand in hand in order to deliver a production system that really meets the standards of the market. I can't stress more, in this field are coming multiple process technologies together in one integrated line. And it always reminds me, it goes back to Singulus' successful days in the CD, DVD industry and optical disc, where different kind of a spin coating, vacuum depositions, buttering, metamaterials, everything was brought together. And it looks like the industry is going a bit in this direction, and they're very interesting systems. The key here is to be very close to the customer, to understand the product development roadmaps of customer in order to match where the customer wants to go with what we can offer in the production systems. I want to cover a bit the photovoltaics and solar market. I'm a big fan of that market. It's a tragedy to see that we are not even faster development. That's my personal opinion that I have here. But it's a fact that in 2026, solar energy will surpass nuclear power, and that's a very interesting development that you have globally happening. Solar, in our opinion, is the kind of technology that is easy to deploy, easy to scale, and still has a lot of development opportunities. And we want to make sure that we are on the forefront on that market, that development. Geopolitically, it's on the other side also a difficult market. There are all sorts of factors that we currently see, from trade activities in certain countries, very rapidly changing duties, not just in the US. You also see that in other countries, and barrier being built and removed, and it goes very, very quick. And while those projects have a certain development time, it's a challenge that those market conditions are changing very rapidly, and they put a lot of questions to investors in those turnkey factories. And that's really the key word that we need to do, because on one side there's a technological change happening to perovskite systems. I want to explain a bit, but there's also a change where customers are more and more requiring turnkey solutions. So that means that we as a company need to be able to provide a very comprehensive full factory setup. And while we work on turnkey setups for heterojunction, that has been well reported by Singulus in the past, perovskite technologies are emerging. Customers who are willing to invest into turnkey solution are also concerned about the option that we built in certain proof points to be future proof for perovskites. And what you do very much in perovskite is there are two key development directions. On the right side, we are showing a very simple perovskite single cell, so that the key active material is just that it's a crystalline mineral perovskite, right? That forms a photoelectric effect. But you can also combine that photoelectric effect with another solar technology, and that's what we call a tandem cell, where you combine, for example, a crystalline cell that could be any kind of a crystalline solar technology, heterojunction, one of the more favored one, together with the perovskite solution. So you have basically, after the production steps of a crystalline cell, an additional step that applies the perovskite solar layers, and that forms what is called a tandem, because they are more than one, right? There are two working principles to convert light into electricity. And Singulus is here extremely well positioned due to the experience from CIGS and CDTE technology. Singulus invested in the last year significantly in evaporation technologies, very large volume lines for evaporators, and that experience now comes very handy to the emerging market of perovskite systems, to not talk about small laboratory tool, what many people do, but very large production systems. And I'm very glad to say that we won first orders in that space, and we see there's a lot of effort being put on, and we take that with the highest priority to go in, because it will complement very well the existing technology platform that we have, and also goes very well with Singulus crystalline technology, and it's something that we will see very soon in the marketplace also. So machines that we have is we can leverage a lot on the existing machine base. Of course, there are certain modifications that are needed in order to do this perovskite solutions, but it requires a combination out of our wet cannula systems and the vacuum deposition systems, and all what is needed to operate that, right? There's a lot of handling and automation technology that goes along with that, metrology questions, and that's very well established in Singulus, and therefore we are looking into this market, and we are trying to work out our competitive edge compared to other market participants, and also from a technology to find our real niche that gives us a unique selling point in that market field. So overall, turnkey solutions have been reported for a long time, being the idea that one company gives a commitment to a customer to establish an entire factory for a solar cell, including efficiency guarantees, throughput guarantees, yield guarantees, and so on. And Singulus is working towards that. The key deposition systems and chemical treatment systems for heterojunction solar are all in Singulus. That's an internal technology. We don't need to leverage external companies. We do leverage only for wafer feed-in and metallization on external companies, and so we are trying to strengthen our footprint here. We have a continuous and very successful development of our own PECVD system. That's a plasma enhanced chemical vapor deposition system. Singulus is the only company in the market that offers a linear, fully dynamic PECVD process. That's a very unique proposition. We have very interesting proof points developed for the technology readiness to apply to also adjust those kind of procedures that are needed to form the right kind of layer stacks that are required for heterojunction latest technology of cells. So, and that combines very well with the perovskite systems. So that would come after that. So what you see here is a 2 gigawatt layout, a very generic layout, and after that you would apply the perovskites. So we are taking measures right now to make sure that that integration or an upgrade at a later stage can be applied very easily. Currently, there are 2-3 key projects that we are looking at globally. There is a bit of hesitancy in the market to see that trade activities and trade war activities are settling down. Investors want to have a certainty of what is expected on duties, on whatever kind of tariffs or limitations to bring exports into certain countries. And that's something that we are very aware of. We are working through that with our internal team, also with some advisors who help us to really navigate this very confusing and complex market situation. And we do hope that in the next coming months, this field is clearing a lot more up, and we see a bit more transparency of what goes and then how is our right approach to go forward. From a technological level, I think we are very well positioned. So we need to be a bit patient and work systematically through all those questions on hand, and that's what we are doing right now. So all in all, I think Singulus is a company that is offering many solutions in thin film coating and surface treatment for many kind of different applications. I want to strive a bit the energy and hydrogen battery market. I think the other key markets I illustrated, I didn't say too much about automotive, but there are also very interesting combinations for certain kind of sensors that we are working on that leverage exactly that technology profile that we bring in. Hydrogen for fuel cell electrolyzers remains a very interesting area. I see especially a very unique proposition in electrolyzers because here Singulus brings a huge know-how from the existing semiconductor market in depositing unique noble metals, and that's what we are doing in a large-scale production. I think it's also a pleasure to say that we won here first commercial projects to make customer equipment and not just samples. So we are in a continuous sample production stage, but we are also building the first commercial lines. And if you see that hydrogen market, I think it's also a very diffuse market. There are many streams going on. The key issue is this cost of hydrogen remains very high, but there are also other trends in the industry where people go from hydrogen in higher grade molecules and do a further processing. And while we work through, we find those kind of customers, and our core capability in wet chemistry and deposition, vacuum deposition system plays very nicely into this market. Similar is true for the battery market, and here we are looking especially for the solid state battery market, which is a very interesting area. So in the solid state, you have a solid electrolyte instead of a liquid electrolyte, which conducts the ion between the contacts and the electrodes, and that's a very key element where we deliver technology that enables exactly that. We have a first machine developed and already shipped to a customer undergoing production ramp up, and we do see great opportunities as we continue further to hone our own technological footprint in looking at multiple customers who have unique questions about making single steps of that technology and bringing this together. And what we show here is an example of an industrial machine that is able to handle very high volume of certain kind of components that are very critical to solid state battery making. So with that, we want to close to provide you a bit of an outlook for 2025 and 2026. So we expect in 2025 a good revenue ahead of 105 million euro, 105 to 115 is our guidance, and EBIT in the mid single-digit million euro range. And we expect that also in 2026 we see a continuation of that development. And that comes from a bit of a strategic repositioning of the company. We will continue being very engaged in the photovoltaic and solar industry, but we also put a higher effort in other areas. I mentioned already the semiconductor market, especially the magnetic materials that we continue to develop for next generation applications, but also to look for beyond magnetics. So means application that require technology for super high precision deposition in magnetics, and apply that to other applications that require our market leading angstrom level position. In life science, I just referred to you examples of surface treatment solutions that go beyond contact lens. We are very active in that space identify those areas, to run first customer trials, to identify what exactly is the proposition that we need. And as always, a product and a process development really have to go hand in hand. So it's a very intense work with customers to develop their products together with our manufacturing machines into a unique process that makes unique products. Solar, I referred to you. We are continuing on turnkey, but we are putting a lot of focus right now on perovskite technologies, and there we can really leverage very well our existing technology footprint in crystalline and thin film solar cells. And the battery and hydrogen market we just explained remains a very interesting field. There's a lot of development going on, and as we go forward, we are making sure that we are very well focused on what exactly is that niche that we want to play, and how can we go. So overall, we are putting a lot of effort on innovation and diversification, so broadening our footprint, expanding into additional future markets, and leverage very well our existing state-of-art technology, and making sure that we have a very clear and focused execution plan.
So thank you, Lars, for the introduction and for the explanations. And now I would like to ask you if you have further questions, or if you have questions, we're happy to take your questions. And our host from MWB will facilitate that. You can raise a question and to us. So look forward to receiving your Q&A.
Mr. Lieberwirth, Mr. Ehret, for the insights that you've shared with us. We will now come to the question and answer session. We already do have quite a few questions lined up that I will put out in the open in a few moments. Going forward, you have two options to put questions to the management of Singulus, and please look at the screen for that. One of them, we'll be typing them into the chat box, and we will then put them into the open. When you do that, please state your name and your company name for the question to be considered. And also you can pose questions using your microphone. And just to walk you through that process, if you want to ask a live question, please type question or quest or whatever you would like into the chat so that we can qualify this as a question that you want to ask through the open mic. We will then entitle you to use your microphone and call your name. Next, on your end, you will get a notification by our system to grant access to the usage of your microphone. So please, on the one hand, click away the notification and give access to the microphone, and then you can go live with your microphone unmuted and we will hear you. Without further ado, I'm going to jump into the first questions that we have. And we had initially quite a few questions from Thomas Schießler, and I will go through those real quickly with you as I put them out in the open. And Thomas is asking, and this was referring to your presentation, immediate focus on the business B was his question. And I guess what he's trying to say, what is your key focus on your business in the short run immediately?
Yes, I answered that. The answer is very clear. It's in the area of sales and development. So when we work with customers on application, we need to bring development and sales really very, very close together. We are serving very specific technological needs of our customers. So therefore, we need to focus very well on making sure that our solutions are ready to the market and to that applications. And we really have to drive our sales and leverage our existing technology to broaden that.
Great. The next question actually is a good follow-up question to the one you just answered. Talking about, and this question goes to you, Lars, talking about your preferred role in management. What's your chief responsibility? Is it operations or development or sales or all of those?
I'm very much involved in all of those. Very key is in the last few weeks we did a lot of work on our operations, making sure that we have our fundaments in good hands. I took over from Dr. Rink in beginning of in December. Basically, there's a bit of a Christmas break also in between. So we did a handover, and so being there in fully since beginning of January, there was a lot of effort initially to make sure that we understand all projects, that we're very deep in our operations and in all aspects of operations. It's all about delivery to a customer. And then since people came back from their year holidays, I shifted my attention a lot on sales and development. And I really say it's a bit on both, because when you do sales in our market, you have to really understand what customer exactly want and how do we find solutions in the best way to answer to customers. And there's my clear focus at the moment.
Thank you. Another question from Thomas, also meant for you, Lars. Going abroad, what customers do you want to approach? Corporations, local entities? What are your target groups?
Yeah, I don't know really where you see the difference. We need to be able to have a product that is scalable, that can be used in different applications, and yet is very specific on areas to make that unique proposition to customers. So that means a lot of our systems today, they are built in product platforms or product families, and we have been working on to understand exactly where those families sit, where there are certain areas where we want to develop further, right? And the key point is to make this together with an application in mind. So if you take, for example, certain kind of sensors that we are working on in as one example, we need to really clearly understand what are those sensors made of, what are the substrates, how do the substrates behave in our machines, how are we able to scale up, how can we make sure that we have a broader use for this technology, so that we can make sure that our current efforts are being able to really provide a platform for our further development. There is a balance always, right? On one side, you want to be broad, and the otherwise you want to be niche, right? So, but if you're only too niche, it's very difficult to sell into other markets. And as an equipment and machine making company, we need to make sure that we have a very comprehensive machine platform, and that is really the key skill I think we have to leverage to find exactly that unique space where we are on one side able to deploy our technology in multiple markets and product application, yet we are very specific on individuals ones that we can scale this customer.
Great. One last question to you, Lars, coming from Thomas, is you mentioned that you want to strengthen the German business. Do you have a particular aim for that? And the question also included the word why do you focus on Germany or strengthen Germany?
Yeah, why I'm from Germany? I'm German. Singulus is a German company. We have a very strong team in Germany, and I have been living for a lot of time and earned my money for many years outside of Germany, and I do have a very global perspective, also in terms of the customers that we deal with. So I have dealt with a lot of international cooperation, also with very large corporations in Asia and China specifically, and I see the innovation speed, the way of how they develop, the passion that people really have. And I think this experience that I brought from those international exposures, I really want to bring back into this German organization. And I think it's something that we really have to put our effort in, is to strive with the same eagerness, with the same hunger, with the same motivation than other people are doing. And we are in a very strong competition, right? All kinds of German companies, and so I have to put a lot of my energy also into the organization, to build a team that's cohesive, that is having that will. And I hope that answers the question.
We have two more questions from Thomas, but this time they're actually earmarked for you, Marcus, concerning more the financial part. The guidance for fiscal year 2025, how important will be solar, especially the CMBM projects?
Well, we do have a very strong order backlog in solar. As I mentioned earlier, it's still about, I'd say, roughly 40 million in solar we have. So that's the biggest part of the order backlog. And this means that we are working on those projects. And of course, this will also mean that we have quite a contribution to the revenues and to the earnings from our solar business in 2025. Having said that, with our friends from Triumph, we have an order backlog of about 20 to 22 million right now, and it's about 22 million. And on those projects we will be also working, but this is part of the delivery in the next, let's say, 18 months.
Okay, thank you. And also another question to you, Marcus, regarding the refinancing. April has just begun. Do you have an update for us on that end?
Well, we do always have a very close look on our financial structure. And everybody knows that the refinancing of the bond is coming up next year in July. We were able to, so we could prolong all other parts of the financing structure until end of March next year. So we'll be working on this in the months coming, and all options are on the table, and we will look at it, and we will have quite some discussions going on then with partners in the capital markets.
Thank you so much. We have a next question that's supposed to be live, coming from Abed Jarrat, who is with MBWB Research in Hamburg.
Hi,
Abed.
good morning. Thank you first for the great presentation. I have two questions. First, on the margins. So looking at the margin, EBIT margin of the segments, the semiconductor stands out with 25. I just want to know how sustainable are these margins going forward?
Okay, thanks for the question, Abid. So we had a lot of recurring business, so repeating machines last year in semiconductor, and this is something, of course, what we are trying to achieve this year also. And this, if we have repeat business, this also gives us a good learning curve, and we're able to stay on good margins. But it always depends on the product mix. And as I said, we do have a good sales pipeline, discussing with various customers, various let's say, layouts of our equipment. And it will depend on how the product mix basically looks like also in the semiconductor area, because we have different modules. Lars has been explaining about that, what we do in semiconductor, remember the chart. So it depends on how it looks like in the end, but of course, we consider semiconductor to be contributing very much to the overall profitability. That's true, and that should stay like that.
And I want to add, from a technology angle, there are not so many people who can do really angstrom level thick coatings, and with a sub-angstrom level deposition over a 300 millimeter wafer, there are not so many. And that gives us a strong position still in the market with customers. And I mentioned also about operations. So we have been looking exactly at those modules. So those modules are typically built in a cluster line. So we have single modules that are forming then a complete machine. And as we go ahead, we make sure that we continuously innovate and take cost out and make sure that we have the functions ready for those modules. And I think those measures, on one side, our unique selling point and market proposition for this angstrom level thick deposition, together with our operational effort, should help us to stay ahead of the curve.
Okay, thank you so much. A follow-up question regarding this. Do you have a target for the EBIT margin for the group? And second, especially regarding solar, do you have any specific initiatives there to strengthen the recurring revenue from the follow-up sales, or?
What was the second? The first one I can answer quickly. I mean, we said that we are trying to achieve single-digit million EBIT based on the 105 million forward roundabout revenue. So that's basically the EBIT margin there. Can you just repeat the second part of the question, though?
Sure. It's basically regarding the follow-up sales from the installed base. I was wondering if you have specific initiatives to increase this recurring sales. So, like, besides modular design architecture, is there any other activities, for example, AI powered or any software integrations that can increase this recurring revenues?
I call that software-defined machines. So machines where software plays a very key role, and you hit the nail. That's one area that we very actively look at, and but we need to see exactly how to implement that. So for certain kind of customers, that's relatively easy, call it, to implement. If you are talking about semiconductors and foundries, it's a bit harder to do because they're usually super tight on their security. It's very, very hard to even bring a USB memory stick in such a kind of a factory. So you have other ways. You have to think about other ways about how you can use software in those fields. What we can say is one key initiative is to strengthen our customer service team. And as we go more and grow that semiconductor market, we also have to beef up our capability for follow-ups. Right? The semiconductor market is very competitive. You have very short answering time for any kind of queries that is coming from a customer. There are certain spare parts that we need to hold. There's an interesting market for targets, and customers are there very careful also because the process is very, very specific to change something. So yes, especially in the market on the semiconductor side, we are strengthening our team to make sure that the recurring and after sales business will develop well.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you for the question. I will turn off your microphone now. The next question that will be posed live comes from Malte Schaumann, who is with Warburg Research. Malte, I will allow you to access your microphone now. And while you're doing this, I will pick up another question and give you a chance to get things sorted out on the technical side on your end. So you are permissioned now. And while you're sorting it out, I will come to a question from Thomas Schießler, who goes back to the refinancing 2025 April question. He writes, Bank of Shanghai loan, super senior loan, both due on April 25, refinancing question mark.
So, sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yes, I can. It's regarding, I guess, two loans that are maturing in April, the super senior loan and, well, he says Bank of Shanghai loan, super senior loan, both due April 25, question mark, refinancing, question mark.
Oh, okay. They were both prolonged. This is all in being prolonged. And the super senior is prolonged until end of March 2026. And as we are speaking, we're in discussion with our friends from the Bank of Shanghai to renew a loan, which will also have a maturity by end of March or even mid-end of April 2026. And this is still to be worked on, but we're seeing that this is on a very good path. And we still have sufficient time to renew that, yes.
Thank you. We have with us Malte Schaumann, Warburg Research. Malte, please state your question.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
We hear you
Yes.
well.
That's great. Okay, first question is on the order backlog. When I do the math, transition from the end of Q3 to end of the year order backlog, maybe I'm missing something, but you had a pretty low order intake of 6 million in the past quarter of the year, but the order intake increased by about 10 or more or less 9 million, although order entry remained significantly below the sales. Maybe there's an can you provide some color on that, please?
So, Martin, what is the question on the order backlog? So,
The order backlog stood at 69 at the end of Q3. Then I add 6 million in new orders in Q4 and deduct 15 million or so in sales in the last quarter. So the order backlog should have declined, but it actually increased during Q4.
Well, we have some order entries, of course, also in the area of services. So you did the math now. Sorry, I have to do the math myself. Basically, what we do see is that we have seen some very interesting and good projects coming in basically at the last day of the year. And we've seen the prepayments also even in December. So we have to get into the details if there's any really detailed question on, let's say, several of the or one of the projects. What we have seen, it was the solar project with Tandem PV customer in the United States. We were very happy to close by the end of the year because it's as I said, it was ahead of the wave we've been basically seeing coming with the Trump administration.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe let's follow up offline on that. Then on the order intake in the first half. So what does your pipeline look like? I mean, if I take your guidance for this year and maybe then also some color for your expectations then going into the next year. So what's the order intake expectation you have maybe for 25 and about the progression throughout the year? So what kind of order level should we expect for the upcoming quarters that would allow you to reach the guidance and then the expected growth in 26?
Basically, we do not hand out specific figures for the order intake and or across the segments. However, as I said, we do have a very strong sales pipeline for the semiconductors market, and we are still working on some larger projects in photovoltaics. So we have sufficient order. We expect to have a sufficient order entry to meet the targets, basically. And from our budget, we do see that the order intake might be higher than last year, depending on, of course, that there's, especially in solar, some projects which are kind of larger and are basically binary, coming or not coming. However, we do see that we have a significant sales pipeline piling up, yes.
Okay. Then some more specific questions maybe on the photovoltaic side. We discussed about a larger US project during the past occasions. Is that still in the pipeline? Has that customer provided you with some indications whether he will proceed as planned or if plans have changed?
So since I'm on board, this is one of my first trip that I took to get an own understanding. We had a very good discussion. There are questions right now on multiple fronts. I think mostly coming from our politics between the different countries and questions of tariffs and how that whole thing will play out. And so there's a bit of a carefulness from customers. So that particular customer that you mentioned is leveraging also through investors. They acquired already certain buildings. They now need investor money, third-party investor money to go in to equip those factories. And there's a stage of negotiation going on. And also people are waiting a little bit, right? So what happens really to the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, that's in the US. Right now, it's under a review period by the Trump administration. We don't know what the outcome is. Yet you can say is especially the states in the US that are more to the south are typically very pro solar because there's a lot of employment connected with the solar industry, and but they are also very Republican, so there's quite a bit of discussion going on behind the scenes. We see also the tariff discussion, like you ship what from where is there. You can see that certain competitors, especially from China, are most likely highly subsidized going into the market. And so that's a very, very diffuse situation for us. There's no decision done in one or the other way. I think we do have a very good opportunity here, and we're working on that very actively.
Okay, do you have any expectation until when that customer might take a decision? So should we have some more visibility by the end of the next quarter, or will it take a bit longer?
Yeah, I think probably in next quarter we have a first indication because there's a deadline coming up by when the Trump administration will conclude on the review of the IRA. Basically, it's a very complex law that some people say is very difficult to undo, right? So because there are a lot of legal steps of how to undo that. But you have seen in the US other developments happening where people are just removed out of offices. So, for example, what the Trump administration may do is to keep the law, the Inflation Reduction Act, in place, but basically defund those departments and remove or reduce headcounts of those departments who are actually processing that. So you have seen that in the US, and that's part of what makes the situation so confused. On one side, you may have even just watch what happened last night with the tariffs in the US. We now have a little bit more clarity, but on the other side, we don't have clarity whether the IRA stays or whether it's being able to access that legal construct. So there's quite a few different aspects that we need to look at.
Okay. Then on perovskite, what's your take on the timeline you may potentially derive from discussions with customers once that market scales up in volume and the required order intake for production equipment? And then regarding the customer base, with how many customers are you discussing on potential projects at the moment?
Okay, so the customer base is more than 5 who are like big and scalable. There's others who are a bit smaller who also are in the stage. We offer for evaporation systems, and there are also certain applications in the wet chemical system. So I think there's a bit of a debate between the scientists which is the way to go. For both, we are, in our opinion, quite well positioned, and we have an idea of how we want to approach that. We won first projects. We are building a machine right now that goes to one of the leading lab, but that is a machine. It's not a lab machine. It's actually aimed to really prove or to show proof points of an industrialization, like how you can roll that up in a much larger stage. We have very deep discussions with customers who are looking for very large industrial systems in so very, very, very large machines in the range of, I don't know, 30-meter long kind of a machine. So you can imagine those machines really have a capability to deliver very high volume, and that's very much the playing field that we are in. We are very active following that, and we do believe that we ship the first machine because we started already in this year, and it depends now on further decision making for those production machines happening. Just last week, I was in Asia. I saw production equipment for 1 gigawatt perovskite system. So it's very interesting to see what's happening in the market, what are others doing, and I think we are very well connected, and we follow that with super high attention.
Okay, sounds interesting. So could be maybe a potential then more for 27, 28 with some smaller orders then effective becoming this year, next year?
That also takes a bit of time to qualify that, right? So perovskite, they do have they're very prone to moisture, and so people take some time for testing. So commercial systems are out already. One player here in Europe and another player actually in China. We know them both, and I think there are many others in the pipeline. So it could happen faster, but it's very, very hard to say exactly a year. So 2028, I think, is maybe a little bit far out. I think it's a bit faster, but it really depends on how that qualification goes. It's the hot topic. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Then on the maybe kind of new applications such as battery or electrolyzing, what's your take on the potential contribution you would expect maybe within the next 2 years or so from order or revenue level?
Yeah, growing is the not so qualified answer, but it will grow. We are having a very strong hope to scale the first equipment that we delivered and fully commissioned, and with our customer for solid state batteries. That's out, and it's running with the full chemistry and everything under condition. That's a continuous processing equipment. So that's the first time that someone goes in solid state from a batch system to a continuous system, and that was delivered by us. They are running trials, and we are in negotiations already, and non-disclosure agreements. This is all signed, and we are expecting negotiations to start as soon as in this month on how to go further and how to roll out for solid state, right? There are other activities in solid state also that are not related to wet chemical system, but deposition systems to make other elements of a solid state battery. We are running tests here at the moment. We have machine layouts already. We have quotations ready, and in the middle of discussion with customers. And I believe that has all to go together, and it will come together. And I do believe this will get a significant part of what we do, right? Is it that significant, more than 20%? I think this will take a while, but it will be a very important contribution, revenue contribution player in the next 2-3 years.
Could that be a double-digit amount, maybe from next year onwards?
Could be, and there's a likelihood, right? If you look at what's happening, especially in the battery market, it has that potential to really be explosive. I think so, right? It could develop very, very rapidly. That's true on the battery market. On the hydrogen market, I am personally a little bit more careful. I'm just coming back from the hydrogen exhibition in Hanover. The Hanover trade show is going on this week, and I was there yesterday. I think hydrogen is still developing. The cost of hydrogen remains still very, very high. You see, there are a lot of people who I've watched over the last years who are stepping out of hydrogen, who decommit from that. And the remaining ones, they're getting more and more professional. We could see that yesterday. Very well. There are some big players, but there's also component players that are getting stronger and stronger. But I think in hydrogen, we need to look exactly the kind of application. So there's on one side the generation of hydrogen. There's a lot of innovation happening, but you then need to use that hydrogen, right? So storing technologies or using technologies. And I do believe you can see in the next years very interesting things where people process the hydrogen further, so they don't stay on a hydrogen level to just process hydrogen, like burning that or using that in a fuel cell. I think that will be lesser a case. I think it will be a little bit more case, and it's a huge growth market to take that hydrogen to a higher level molecule and do something further with that. And those business models suddenly become very profitable. And I think that's so carbon capture just being one of those keywords, right, is something that we are going to see. And I think to do so, the quality of the hydrogen is also more and more important, right? So Singulus was working on solutions for FOSC. we are very deep into a certain kind of PEM electrolyzer solutions, and those are of a very high quality of that hydrogen that is able to do those following steps. So I remain positive, but hydrogen is a long shot. It will take some time.
Yeah. Okay, many thanks.
Thank you, Malte, for your questions. We are almost done looking at the time. Sorry. It's 11:25. I have 3 more questions, all coming from Mr. Schiesler, and one of which was already answered, unless you feel like you want to add something to this, Lars. And the question reads, solid-state battery project, first delivery is done, next steps. You just elaborated on that in depth a few moments ago. Unless you feel like there's additional knowledge to be imparted, we can come to the next question.
Yes,
Also from Lars regarding Temaris modules, is the application portfolio complete? And do you have further investments that you need to be done in this space?
Yes, it's not complete. We are actively working on the modules to improve the modules in certain aspect, but also to add something more to that. So this is a very high area of my attention, and as we spoke about, like where is my focus, I think it's very much in the sales side, but also the developmental side. I have a very, very intense discussion with the team, and we are working on how to bring this Temaris family right to a next level. There are details within the modules, right? So think about different temperature ranges or a couple of other features that we can add in, but it also looks at other aspects and maybe some different models or modules, I want to say modules, that we could add to complement the current portfolio. I think we have a good portfolio at the moment, but we always need to look from the application. So if you're going for another application, there might be another aspect needed. We have identified that very clearly, and we are putting our work together to identify the next steps in doing that. And some of those actions to implement new features there have been started. We have reprioritized a number of projects. So we have been going through project by project and introduce a few new, pull a few others a little back to make sure that we have the development effort really rise, especially in this market. So we need to understand what are the applications and make sure that the maturity level of our site is good.
Great. Thank you. We're coming to the last question, also from Thomas Schiesler regarding cash flow for 25 and 26 and R&D costs. And that question, of course, goes to you, Marcus. It reads, free cash flow for fiscal year 25 and fiscal year 26 possible, R&D costs to stay on fiscal year 24 levels.
Well, basically, our R&D costs are very much related to the headcount and to the projects. And typically what Lars just said is like, we do develop those processes not just by us alone, but we always have key customers working. We're working together on those processes and new type of modules, for example, in semiconductor, but also in the other areas, in the other segments. So we do believe that our R&D, which is that's been depicted last year and the year before, basically stays on the same level, and that's basically how we want to move forward. There'll be no further assets or other things which have to be considered and might cause strong cash outs or something like that. So that's basically, I think, answering the question, hopefully.
Thank you so much. And this concludes our earnings call for the fiscal year 2024. Thank you very much, Lars Lieberwörth and Marcus Aerts, for the insight. And of course, thank you to everybody who was involved in asking questions and to everybody who participated and listened to what we had to learn. Thank you very much. This is a recorded call, so you will be able to see it on Research Hub later today and maybe also on the Singulus website. Wish you all a great afternoon, and once again, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for your support.
So thank you.